The Waterville man who pleaded guilty in the killing of his roommate in August of 24 was sentenced today in an Augusta courtroom. 42-year-old Thomas Lowry entered an Alford plea in February in connection with the killing and dismemberment of 43-year-old Charles Bellows. An Alford plea allows the defendant to plead guilty while still maintaining innocence. Today, Lowry received the maximum sentence of 35 years. Before the sentence was handed down, friends and family of Bellows spoke about his life, calling him tremendous, a true man, and a good friend.